Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this masterclass session. And a warm welcome to all the teams as they join in, and everyone following from YouTube. So this afternoon, the session will focus on code version control, looking at Git, looking at GitHub, and a range of things. You will have an opportunity to ask questions throughout. So just raise your hand or type on the chat box. We're just going to wait 4 more minutes to allow everyone to come in, and at 4:05, we'll now hand over to the team from Intercodex with a session today led by Tinashe. But yeah, so let's just wait 3 more minutes. Thanks.
Hello? Hello, can
Hello,
anyone hear
Tinashe.
me? Good afternoon,
Yes,
everyone. Yes, can you hear me?
yes, we can hear you. I guess you can take over and get started. We're waiting for 5 minutes to allow more people to get in, but I guess you can go ahead. Tenjiwe and Tinashe, the floor is over to you. Perhaps if you could introduce yourself quickly, Tenjiwe, and introduce your team today. Thanks. Tinashe, Tenjiwe. Tinashe, are you there? Please unmute. So at the bottom, you should see the button to unmute. Tinashe, you are also muted. Please unmute and get started with the session. All right, while they are still trying to unmute, a reminder that ahead of the session, getting an error. Okay, that's strange. Can you please maybe refresh the session on the browser? Just refresh the page and then try to rejoin. So I was saying that as part of the preparation for today's masterclass, we had asked that you create a GitHub account just to follow along. But maybe just by a show of hands, how many of us have have a GitHub account? Let me put it like that. Okay, Harry does have a. Okay, okay. All right, and then now by a show of indication on the chart, it just maybe specify what do you use your GitHub account for. So this session will be looking at key specifics in terms of how to use code version control and looking at a range of things. Maybe just indicate on the chart as to what do you use your GitHub account for. Do you only use it to copy code? Do you use it to collaborate with your team? Do you use it to find data sets or any other sort of needs? Just perhaps indicate on the chart. And I'm going to check Tinashe again. Tinashe, Tenji, where can you please try to unmute and we try it once more. Dumisani Magagula, you can lower your hand. Thank you. Tenji, where Tinashe? Oh, okay, Jocelyn says for version control for mobile and web applications. I will be interested as to what stacks do you use to build your mobile apps, Jocelyn, and then also Gloria, I use it to keep track of my code. Also interested in the languages you use. So you can go ahead and drop your language on the chat. Okay. Kotlin, did you start off with Java? Okay, great. Let me check. Okay. Seems like the facilitators are just still sorting out the technical issues. But let's use this opportunity to ask questions on the Datathon following the sessions that took place. Was it last week? But yeah, so if you have got a question, feel free. And I know that some of you are joining for the first time as well. You are welcome, and some did indicate that some commitments, especially with preparations to write tests and exams as such. But yeah, so the floor is open. We can get started with some of the questions, whether technical or, yeah, especially technical, please. Okay. Karabo Maboga. I know Karabo Maboga is from Intercodex. Okay, in the last session, we were not given the opportunity to meet with mentors. Nick, do you want to take that on? Okay, so it seems like Nick is unable to unmute as well. But so on Sonke, we have been adding mentors. Some of them are still being added on, but there's a process that has been going on because with the list of mentors, some were no longer available. And then we had to look at ensuring that we do have mentors that are specific to your team. Remember, the mentor allocation will look at what is your team working on. Secondly, we look at what are the skills that are required by your team, is essentially, and then from there we then allocate mentors. Let's say perhaps a team is strong at technically, but having gone through your proposal, we notice that the business element, the process flow might be lacking. We'll look at such aspects and then assign mentors to your particular team as such. That there are those that are very non-technical as well. So in that regard, designated technical mentors are being carefully allocated to teams. So teams haven't been allocated mentors. Yes, they have not been. They have not been allocated mentors as of yet. But you'll also remember that we wanted to go through the master classes first. You acquire all the knowledge from the master classes, and then having acquired the knowledge from master classes, your team will then also go back to say that based on what we have learned, we can shape our solution to be like this. And then if there's an evolution, if there is an evolution of your solution, and we had already allocated you a mentor who will no longer be able to assist with the evolution. We wanted to put some safeguards on that. But yeah, so that process is well underway. We're just monitoring the master classes as well. Yeah. Maybe let me just check. Tinashe, are you back? Okay. All right, seems like that they are still busy sorting that out. I was on a call with one of the facilitators, but perhaps Karabo Maboka, are you still here? I don't see Karabo anymore. But yeah, are there any more questions, guys? All right. So while you think about the questions, just a reminder as well that you need to profile your team on Sonke. So just click the team profile button on Sonke and start profiling your team. And then after that, you will then be able to add your team members. We have been changing the system a little bit, but from tomorrow, nothing really changes in terms of how you add the team. But we just need to ensure that all the teams have profiled themselves by Friday. Let's ensure that we have profiled our teams, because that's how mentors will actually be added to your team channel once you have been profiled, and also to give more understanding and to set concretization of your solution as such. So please do profile your team. And when adding your members, please just try to add the names as accurately as possible, because after the datathon, you will then be able to download a certificate of participation through Sonke as well. Okay. The data sets that will be specific. Yes, that process is still underway as well. And there are some data sets that will be coming from UNISA and the team. So that's a process underway as well. Not a question, but since most participants are having technical issues with this plus. Yeah, so we went with Jitsi because firstly for the datathon, especially through Sonke, the Jitsi is already there. So the first reason was to ensure that people get familiar with it, and then secondly, the most people that are having problems are people that are using Macs. You know, a MacBook is not a serious device, guys. You must use a serious device and a serious OS. I'm kidding, but the challenges have been noted, and we do apologize for any inconvenience. When will we be able to access those data sets? So there is a document that's curated so far, and we are hoping to finalize that by next week, Tuesday as well. In terms of more sector specific data sets. But the data set that normally comes from NEMISA, UNISA, it's really centered around digital skills for looking at different sectors at the end of the day as well. And also to remind everyone that your solution needs to be speaking to a policy direction. So you've come up with this solution. What policy direction is that geared towards as such? But please bear with us a little bit. We are completing that process. It's a parallel process that's going on with mentor allocation, because the finalization and full understanding of your solution speaks to that in terms of the data sets as well. All right, Tinashe, can we please do checks, please? Okay, you are on mute. Tinashe? Tenji? Okay, I think we'll have to switch. Can we change our proposals? To a degree, yes, and that's another reason why these master classes are happening. Oh, hi, Tinashe.
Hello. My sincerest apologies to everyone. My electricity just went. It was not load shedding, so it was unscheduled. So I had to change location and find a
Okay.
place with electricity and Wi-Fi. My sincerest apologies for that. I
All
did not
right.
anticipate that.
Can you give me a minute? I just need to address this question.
Okay.
All right.
You can continue.
So
I'll get started whenever everyone is ready.
all right. No. In just a minute now. So you are allowed to make changes to your proposal, but
Hello.
to Tinashe. Tinashe, can you hear me?
Yes. I'm saying I'll get started whenever everyone's ready. My apologies. I had unscheduled. My electricity just went.
Oh, we got that. So what I
Hello.
was saying, what I was saying to you is, I'll give you heads up to start just now. I'm just finishing up answering this question here.
Okay. My apologies.
Sharp.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. You can change your proposal, but to a certain degree. So the suggestion would be to get in touch with Pablo. He is here on the call, and also Skinny. And then we'll then just need to hear um, to what exactly do you need to change, but you're not allowed to change it fully. In this regard, we can help you to realign it. Yeah. And then after profiling our teams, we're submitting materials. So, well, you can start submitting materials now, but we'll provide more guidance on submitting the material. So the reason of profiling your solution is that the Sonke system is integrated. That's how your team will be judged at the end. So if your team is not profiled, you will not be judged. That's basically done on Sonke. Fremont should have received your an invite to Sonke. So please just check. If not, we can still assist you to get in, and then you'll just click a button that says Team Profile. Just scroll up on the Hackathon Hall if you can find that button right away. But as long as you're on Sonke, we'll be able to assist you in that. All right, without any further ado, Tinashe, may I invite you to please share your screen, and then we can then get started with the session. Tinashe?
Oh, my apologies. I was muted. Me.
All right, please let's get started with the session, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Let me just take a moment to share my screen. Just give it a moment to load. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, sir.
Hello? Is anybody able to hear me?
Yes, we can hear you and we can see your screen.
Okay. Okay, cool. Let's just let it load. Okay, hold on.
Can you find and be able to tell when she is not okay?
Tinashe, we can no longer see your screen unless if that's just me.
Just please give me a moment. It was taking long to load. I'll share it again just now. Okay. Share video. So I'm just looking for the share screen option. It seems to have disappeared.
Bottom of the screen, and then you've got 3 tabs. Whether you can share a tab, a window, or entire screen.
Okay, hold on. Just okay, sorry. Yeah. Okay. Hold on. Download it. Can you see my screen now? You can see my screen, of course.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today's class, apologies for the delay. Today's class is on version control. So in terms of what we're going to be going through in this session, we're going to go through obviously what is version control, what are the tools that we use for version control, and some of the terminology that we might encounter that we will encounter when doing version control. So what is version control, or what is the purpose of version control? So I want you to imagine a scenario. You're working for, I'll give the example of, let's say, WhatsApp. I think WhatsApp is best because I'm sure most of us have WhatsApp. You're a developer for WhatsApp, and WhatsApp has essentially been developed, and you have the code, and WhatsApp works. Then the management has a meeting, and they decide, actually, we'd like to add some new features to WhatsApp. So, for example, let's say you created WhatsApp, you can message each other, but there's no feature of statuses. You can't put up a status for other people to see. So your boss might allocate you a task. I want you to take the code and modify it so that you can now put statuses. So where the complications arise is that, for one, you don't want to mess with the original code base, right? So imagine you trying to install this new feature of putting up statuses on WhatsApp, but the thing with code is that it can be so intricate that any little change can end up breaking everything. Not always the case, but it can happen. So you don't want to risk that original code. Not only that, but there's the other element of working together, a whole group of people working together. You typically work in large teams. So it's another way for teams to ensure that there's collaboration, and also keeping track of the many changes within the updates, right? So essentially, that's what version control, the whole purpose of version control is. It's to allow teams to work together, to collaborate, to keep track of changes to the code, and also to protect the code. And even just going by this definition, says version control, also known as source control, is the practice of tracking and managing changes to software and code, right? So in conducting version control, we typically have tools that assist us in this, right? We typically use Git and GitHub, which we'll delve into going forward. So I already gave you the example of working for Facebook or Meta, and they now want you to make changes to WhatsApp. So you start with the original code, as you can see. And when your boss instructs you, okay, can you put a feature so that people can share videos, for example, or so that people can put up profile pictures, you make what is known as a branch. And on that branch is where you'll typically add your features. And once those features have been approved by sometimes one or more people, usually your bosses, then it gets integrated into the main code, and that becomes the new WhatsApp code or the software code that you work with. So typically this is called your main or your master branch, and then your side branches, you name them whatever you want, right? So you make side branches, you play around with the code here. You typically clone the code onto your local machine. You make your changes here, and then they integrate it back into the main code, and that becomes the code that everyone works with. So there's a diagram just to demonstrate what I was previously saying. So you typically have your remote repo or repository, such as GitHub. And what you'll do is you'll clone the code from the remote location onto your local machine, right? Which is usually your laptop or your computer. And then you make changes to it using a code editor such as Visual Studio Code. And then you push those changes back to the remote repo, and ideally they get approved and then integrated into the main branch. So that's pretty much the process workflow, right? So some of the terminology we'll be encountering in this lesson is, for example, repository. So it's basically like your central storage location for managing and tracking the changes within files and directories. So in our case, our repository will be on GitHub. It's essentially like a remote folder. Then, as I said before, your default branch, your main or your master branch is called your default branch is called your main or your master branch. That's typically what gets deployed onto, for example, if it was WhatsApp, onto the code that gets deployed onto all the cell phones. And then you typically refer to your branches, which are where you make your edits and you make your changes and so forth. If we just refer back to slide 4, this diagram. And remote, so remote is where the common repository, like I said, GitHub, where team members get to exchange their changes. And as you can see here, it's usually hosted on a server such as GitHub or maybe an internal server. And then your local repository would be your computer or your laptop. Yes. So what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be cloning a repository from GitHub. which is our remote location, onto our local machine. We're then going to be making changes to the repository, like editing and creating files using Visual Studio Code as our code editor. And then we're going to be taking those changes and sending them back to our remote location, which is GitHub, using some of the Git commands, right? So if you don't already have some of these tools installed, please make sure you install them and follow along. So the first tool is obviously Visual Studio Code, which is our code editor. As you can see, the interface here, we'll be making changes to our code and so forth. And here is our terminal. We'll be working from our terminal, our Git terminal. So you can actually use a terminal within VS Studio Code, or also use actually the command prompt. But I personally just prefer to use Visual Studio Code. And that's where your code is displayed, and your folders and corresponding files are here, right? So when we clone from GitHub, we will know that we've successfully cloned or copied the files from GitHub onto a local machine when they appear in this top left-hand corner, right? And already previously mentioned Git, which is a version control system that allows you to track changes in terms of your files. And like I said previously, it's used for coordinating work amongst programmers, and it allows collaboration, especially within the software development field. There's one of the links to download, and you can see how it looks. Just an example of what you can expect. There's the git init command, git add, git commit. So this is some of the things we will be doing in this lesson. And then, of course, GitHub, which is a cloud-based service for software development and can be used with Git to store and manage code. So if, for example, like you want to store code or certain projects that you also want to show off to recruiters, or just keep for safekeeping, or even if you want to download other people's code to either make contributions to open source or adapt their code for your own needs and analysis, GitHub is the place to go. You will need a GitHub account. So we'll be working with Visual Studio Code, Git, and GitHub, right? And some of the commands we will be doing are mainly git clone, which retrieves the entire repository from GitHub. There's git add, which adds the changes in the working directory to the staging area. Git status, which lets you see which changes have been staged and which haven't, i.e. that is to say, which changes that you've made that you're now keeping track of. And then git commits is when you are ready to commit your changes, then you push them back to GitHub. And yeah, that's when you can upload from the local repository onto your remote repository. Then there is a git pull, which is the opposite of git push. This is typically used to bring modifications. So once you've cloned your repository, whilst you're working on it, there might have been changes made to the main or master branch. So you typically want to pull those changes down using git pull. Okay, so now we'll start. I hope that was comprehensive enough in terms of the theory. Okay, so we'll get started. So the first step is obviously you want to create your repository on GitHub. So just go to GitHub. And okay. Oh, okay. It wants me to verify. Please give me 2 seconds. So this is not typically a GitHub account that I use. This one I'm using for demonstration purposes. So it will have certain security features. Okay, so now we are on GitHub. Can I just get confirmation that you guys can still hear me and that you're following?
Yes, but
Hello?
there's a concern. Hi, there's a concern about the
Yes.
pink color. It's nothing I can do
Sorry,
from my
what?
side.
Oh, is it not displaying well on other people's screens?
It appears not.
Okay, it's just give me 2 seconds. Let me just see if I can quickly rectify. Just give me 2 seconds.
Just out of interest, just drop on the chart which one do you prefer,
Okay.
light or dark mode? Guys, so I'm asking a question for future sessions as well. Which one do you prefer, light mode or dark mode?
Hello, don't worry, I'll share just now. Apologies. Let me just quickly ask, does this look any better? Is this clear to anybody? Hold on. I don't know if this is any better. Not sure how to, I need to create a theme to make it. So I don't know if this is any better for anyone. Hello?
There's.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Okay.
I was just
okay.
waiting for everyone to give thoughts,
Okay.
but there seemed to be a consensus. I hope this is a consensus that make it dark background and white text.
Okay. Yeah, I'll keep that a note, but hopefully you can see this so far, if this is any better, but for future reference, I'll keep track of that. But hopefully everyone got the main terminology and what we'll be covering. So we'll essentially get started on that, and you'll see it in action, basically. So we do start by creating a new repository, right? So as we said before, that's our central storage place where we keep our code. So essentially, we can name our repository anything we want. Just call it repository, and GitHub will tell you whether the name is available or not. Then you can put a description of what this is. This is for a masterclass. Okay. Now we'll keep our access public, and then we'll just initialize with the README file. And I think that's it. And we can then create our repository. Okay, and then you can see we've successfully created our repository, right? And this is counted as our first commit or our initial commit. As you can see, the README files here, there's usually a description of the project. You can put it in here. We can also choose to create another file. Back to repository. And then choose to add file, create file. And you can call this file, we'll just call it, file.md. So what MD stands for, just for reference, it stands for markdown file. It's a markdown file. So it's essentially just a text file. And we'll be using this for demonstration purposes. Typically, you'll be working with, obviously, the files of whatever programming language you're using. So if you're using Python, you'll be using .py files. So if it's HTML, then this would be .html, .py if it's Python, etc. So we'll be using markdown files just for the purpose of demonstration. But obviously, when you're doing it yourself, you just remember that you'll be using actual code. So we can type in anything here. So in our file, since it's a markdown file, this was added on GitHub, right? And then we can commit our changes. So we can also add an extended description, and I think we'll leave that for now. And that is our commit message. Please do remember that for later. Then we have our extended description. And typically it's a bad practice to commit to the main branch. You typically don't do that. You create a new branch and then you make a pull request. And then, like I said, if your boss or superiors or whoever's in charge of that code base approves your changes, then they will do what is called merging, and they'll merge it onto the main branch or the master branch, and then that will become the new code base essentially. But just for this purposes, we'll just commit directly to the main branch. And as you can see now, we have two files. We have the file we initialized with our initial commit, and then we have the file MD, which of course, if you click, this was added on GitHub, right? So that's what we have. And you can maybe even make changes to that. This was modified on GitHub. And you see you have another commit message, commit our changes. And yeah, see the file is changed. And we've done 3 commits now. As you can see, it says we did our initial commits 3 minutes ago, then we created the file MD, and then we modified it. And as you can see, it even shows us where the difference is. There's one change file with 2 additions, 0 deletions. You can see the green shows that we added onto this. This was modified on GitHub, and then this was originally there, right? So we've essentially modified this file and added this line. Okay, so now going to some of the commands that we use. Just open Visual Studio Code. And then what we're essentially doing, as like we said previously, one of our goals, we're going to be cloning a repository from GitHub. So essentially, we're going to be taking the files that are on GitHub, which is like our main code base, and we're going to clone it, or essentially another word for clone is to copy it onto our local machine, in this case, the laptop, make changes, like editing and creating files using Visual Studio Code, and then send back to the remote location using Git. So it's just to become familiar with some of the commands, right? So the first step in this is creating an empty folder. And this empty folder we're going to open in our Visual Studio Code and clone our repository into the empty folder. So we can call empty folder, I'll just call it repos. Okay, excuse my desktop is a mess. And then, okay, then we will, I put on my desktop. So then there's our folder, right? So we've now opened our folder in Visual Studio Code, right? So this Visual Studio Code, as I said, we've created an empty folder. As you can see, there's nothing inside. And we're now going to clone from GitHub onto our local machine. So we start by opening the terminal. And if you have Git installed, you should be able to make changes using Git bash. So that's what we'll be using in our terminal. So there are other ways to do this. Maybe you can say simpler ways. There's source control here. You can initialize a repository. You can clone a repository. Like there's places where you can click and do the stuff, but it's nice to get familiar with essentially I said like the command prompt, the terminal, writing commands in the terminal. So we've got git bash. Then what we do is we go back to GitHub. And we copy the HTTPS and we use the command. Introduction to our first command is git clone. I haven't copied it completely correctly. Let me just double check. That tilde is not supposed to be at the end. Yeah, it seems to have added a 0, 1, and that's not supposed to be there. So now it's essentially cloning from GitHub onto our local machine, right? And how do we know if it's been cloned successfully? Well, we just we check. So first of all, remember it is an empty folder. So now we've actually got our repository, which we cloned from GitHub. I just chose to name it like this. And then we have the two files. There's the README file, which we initialized with the message. This is for version control masterclass. And then the file MD, which is this was added on GitHub. This was modified on GitHub. So we've successfully cloned onto our local machine, right? So now what we're going to do on our local machine is we're going to make some changes, which we are then going to push back to the remote repository, right? So how we do that is first we make some changes, right? Oh, before we even do that, mistake, we first have to change our working directory into the Git repository, right? So as you can see right now, we are in the folder. An analogy I like to use is we're in the house, but we want to go to the specific room, which is the repository, right? So we use change directory or CD, right? If you're familiar with command prompt and the terminal, CD and repository, change directory. Okay, so now we are actually in our Git repository, and one indication of that is that you'll often have, like I said, it's usually either main or master. In my case, it's main. I think it used to be conventionally master, and then they changed it for certain reasons. So it will typically appear in brackets like this. By the way, I never asked, can everybody see this clearly? I never ask because I'm working in light mode, and typically people work in dark mode. So is everything okay so far? Can I moderator? Sorry, can you hear me? Is everything okay? Okay, I'll just continue. I'll assume everything is going okay. So, okay. Hold on, can you guys still see my screen? Hello? Can I just get confirmation that you can still see my screen? Hello? Oh, okay, I'm seeing the thumbs up now. Apologies, switching between windows. Okay, so this brackets main is an indication that we are now in our Git repository, and you can see the working directory here. So we're gonna now make changes to our file. So in the first case, we've got file MD. You can do anything, it's a markdown file, essentially a text file. So maybe we'll write this was modified on our local or laptop thing, right? And you'll notice here an M appears. So the M actually stands for modified. It's actually written there. I've never actually taken note that it's written there, but the M stands for modified. And so we've modified this file, right? And then we'll go ahead and even just inside the repository, we'll create a new file, right? And we'll call it new file. And we'll also make it a markdown file. And you see a U appears here, which stands for untracked, which means that Git has not taken note of it. Actually, it's neither taken note of any of these two. So how we can then see that is by using the git status, which is the second command we're being introduced to. Git status. And you can see that our files appear in red here. It says you've modified this file .md, and you've created a new file, untracked file, new file.md. So we've modified this file and created this file, right? So Git has not taken note of this. So an analogy I like to use is maybe, don't know how appropriate it is, but it's like almost like you are in a relationship with someone, but nobody knows about it. So in adding it, what we're going to do is add it to a staging area. It's like you're telling people, right? Like you're telling Git, like, can you make this official? And then afterwards, we'll use Git commits, which is maybe like, we can say it's like an engagement, for lack of a better word, but anyways. So to add these, see the untracked currently, we use the git add command, right? And there's typically 2 ways to do this. So you can add each of the files individually. So for example, we want to add the changes we made to file.md. You can use git add and then use file md for the markdown. Or we can just add all of them at once by using a period or a full stop. So git add and okay, so how do we know if these changes are now staged in the staging area? Well, we then go back to the status. And as you can see, they're now in green. And even Git even tells you if you want to undo this, you can use git restore to unstage each file individually, or probably if you use a period, you unstage all of them. But right now they are now committed, engaged, and it's like they're ready to be sent up to GitHub for back to the remote repository. So we've used git add, and the next command is git commit. So this is like the engagement part. So after you use git commit, everything in the staging area will be committed, and you can add M, which stands for message, and you put a message. So remember, I told you to take note of the description or extended message. So this is one of the ways in which we can, this is where it comes in. So you are describing the changes you're making or whatever you want to include with your, basically a commit message, what you want to include with your commit. So typically it's a description of what you're doing, right? What changes you're making. And you can also add another -m and have a extended description where you might want to type more. That's essentially that bigger text box that we showed earlier, but I'll just use one and we'll say we modified, actually not choose, modified file.md and created a new file. Create a new file.md, right? And yeah, and now it's committed. So how do we push back to GitHub? We use the command known as git push, right? So now that we've committed, we can now push it to GitHub to make it official. We use git push. So it's usually either origin, master, or main. In my case, it's main. So git push origin main. And then we wait and see if we can see our changes on GitHub. And it says our permission was denied, right? So this is most likely due to, so you can't just push always back to the repository. So we create a repository, but you need to show GitHub that that repository belongs to you, essentially, that you can push changes onto it. In the case here, we're working individually. So what we need to do is generate an SSH key. And in that way, we can prove ownership to GitHub. So we'll try to do that now. And the command you use, so this is always changing. I think it depends on the encryption you're using or the security, but we'll use this one in particular. And then you put your email. Right. And make sure everything is correct. And then we enter. So what's happening here, it's generating two keys, SSH keys. One is your, well, I'll show you. One is your private key and one is your public key. So typically you should never show your private key to anyone, and then you have your public key. So it says, where would you like to save the key? So I like to typically name it, call it test key, or can be anything. Test key. We'll include no passphrase for now. And it's generated two keys. Hope it's within the repository. Yes. So that is our public key and that is our private key, right? So what you can now do is you redirect to GitHub. Right. And go under settings. And you go to this location, your SSH and GPG keys. And you create a new SSH key. So this is where you will paste your public key. Give it any title you want. Test keys. Just call it test keys. Yeah, it's called test key. Test keys. And we copy this. Then we add the key, and it tells us we've successfully added the key. It's called test keys. See, we added it now. Okay, right. Okay, now we have to start our SSH agents. Okay. Okay. And you typically get a random 4-digit number, right? And then you add the working directory of your private key. Which is typically, it's usually somewhere up here. Okay. ID, something along these id.rsa -rsa. Hopefully, apologies, this one is. Okay, so it says identity added. So if everything was done correctly, hopefully it was, you should be now able to push these changes back to GitHub. So try again, git push origin. And crossing fingers. Oh, unable to access. Oh, okay. I see what's wrong here. This is this step would have worked. Hopefully it works for you, but this terminal or my Git is configured under my other GitHub profile. Yeah. So my apologies to that. So those steps should all work. In this case, I did not configure. This is my other GitHub profile, my other username. And then for this one, as you can see, my username for this one is something completely different. So I would need to change that. But unfortunately, we don't have time for troubleshooting. So just continue. So I want to show you, just to keep it moving, I'd just like to show you about how you might then work together now using these commands essentially. So what we'll do now, we'll give another example. So the next step will be a bit, how can I say, tricky, because I'm one person, but in the interest of time, I'll try and simulate like I'm two people, if that makes any sense, or I'll try and see if I can see what I can do. So let's say, let me make a new repository. So I want to simulate maybe a workflow of you working with your team. Let me just go back. So we'll create a new repository. And maybe we'll call this collaboration. Oh, I spelled it incorrectly. Okay, and this is to demonstrate collaboration, right? And then you can add the .readme, and we essentially create our repository as previous, right? And as you can see, we've created our repository. You can add a file again. and skills for collaboration. GitHub. And then in this case, we'll commit directly to the main branch. So we have our repository known as collaboration, and we've created our 2 files, right? So now what we want to do is you add collaborators. Okay, hold on. Oh, I named my repository. Shouldn't have put that dash. But go to settings, should be around settings. And accessibility. No, hold on. Okay. 2 seconds. Hold on. No, actually, sorry, my bad. Two seconds. Okay. Yeah, apologies. I got the overall settings mixed up with the repository settings. So when I add collaborators, we're here. So I'm gonna give my other GitHub account access just to show. So you can search by your username, full name, email. So just hopefully I appear, and that should be me. And then add this to the repository, like as a collaborator. So now I'm going to log out of this, pretend I'm someone else. Hopefully this okay. Yeah, my own password. Okay then. So I should have a notification. Actually, there's no notifications. Very strange. Just give me 2 seconds. Actually, no. Sorry. So it comes as an email. So let me just accept. Okay, so you won't see it here, but I've gone to my email and I found the invitation to collaborate. So obviously you have your email associated with your GitHub account. And just do it on my personal device. Okay, I've accepted the invitation. So it should, okay, cool. So hopefully now it shows. Okay, cool. Let's see if this so to show up. Okay, here it is. Right. Okay, so as you can see, this is the one I was invited to collaborate on by myself, but obviously I'm simulating like 2 people. And so same procedure, we'll make a new folder, excuse my messy desktop, because we want to clone this repository, right? So we can call it collaboration. Okay. And then open Visual Studio Code again. Folder. Okay. Okay, we're back here again, and as previous, open our terminal, working with our, I'm going to change to our Git bash terminal, and then we clone the repository. So, okay, have we successfully cloned? Yes, we have. So let's say the task was to fix something within this markdown file. Like I said, it's for demonstration purposes, so we'll pretend we fix some code, right? Actually, even before we do that, so what you'll typically do before you continue work is you need to go into your, let's undo our changes, apologies. We go into our Git repository. It's spelled correctly. And you remember I told you that it is bad practice to commit to the main branch. So if we go back to our diagram, sorry, click on the wrong things. We go back to our diagram in our slides. What we are now about to do is to create a different branch. So we're right now on the main branch. We create a different branch and we make changes to this branch or add features in this branch, right? Could be 1 feature, could be 2 features. And then that gets approved. You make a push, you push it back onto GitHub. And when it gets approved, it gets merged back onto the main branch. So what you have to do is you make another branch, right? And this is the command we use. We use the git checkout, right? And then we name whatever, we give the branch a name, right? So in this case, we'll call it fix. We're fixing something. Or actually even feature, we're adding a feature videos or statuses, depending on, let's say, app. Right, so it's now created this branch, right? Excuse. And you can see, you notice here, we're in our main branch. Now we've created this branch here called, which we'll call feature videos, right? And if we use the git branch command, it will actually show us our branches. So we have our main branch and our feature videos branches. Essentially, we've got 2 branches here. And then if you want to switch between the 2, you exclude the B, you just use git checkout. And then you say git checkout main, git checkout feature videos. So that's how you switch between the new, the 2 branches or any other branch you create. Here we're just using the creation feature. So it's git checkout and then use a -b and then the name of the the branch and even just try it out for demonstration purposes. Git checkout main, let's see. And it's changed back to main, and it even tells us that our branches are up to date, but we haven't done anything. But we'll go back to our feature branch. You can also even check the differences. So we can say git diff and checkouts. It's not giving us anything. Okay, probably got the command a bit wrong, but it's okay. We'll continue. It's supposed to show you any differences, but we haven't made any. So let's go back and make changes. Okay, we've switched back to feature video. So we said we want to fix, right? So we go to file and we'll pretend like we're fixing something. Oh, we're adding video, sorry. I have modified the code to include videos. Is my typing. The code. So we're just pretending we modified it to include videos, right? And then we do the whole process again. So you can say get status, but we're working on our branch, one of our branches, our side branches. So get status. Notice it's been modified, but it's in red. So we need to add it to the staging area. Same workflow. Okay, then we try get status again. And now it's in green, right? Ready for to be, it's been staged now and ready to be committed. So kids commits, and the message will be like we added a video feature, or added, let me keep it simple, video feature. Okay, so now the next step is to push this up to GitHub. But you'll notice in the previous example, let's say git push origin, we push main. So here in this case, we are not pushing main, we're pushing this particular branch back up to GitHub, right? Then should go back to GitHub. Oh, okay, hold on. Should appear. So you notice here now it says recent pushes less than a minute ago. So in this case, typically, okay, so you can make a pull request, right, which is a request for this to be incorporated into the main code, right? So it's added a video feature. Well, it's already described in here. And yeah, you can try and you make your pull request. So you basically, what you're doing is you're requesting for it to be merged onto the main branch. You've done your changes, they ideally work, and you create your pull request, right? And this is typically a very good sign. This branch has no conflicts with the base branch. So that's a good sign that there's no clashes, because you might have deleted something in one file and then it's there in the other file, so it can create clashes. So in this case, merge pull request. So like I said, you typically have security features or what's called branch policy, right? So if you notice here, you notice I merged it into the main. Typically, the other account should be the one that's able to do that, because that would be your boss or the people who are in charge of the code base. So it would be, essentially like the people who approved the changes. But in this case, both accounts had equal access. That shouldn't be the case. You should have branch protection policies, whether that's in terms of the number of comments that should be on the code or the number of reviewers who need to approve it. Maybe 5 people need to approve it before it's merged onto the main branch. So just to note, branch security and policy is a very important feature, and you can limit obviously the powers of some collaborators. We're not covering that in this scope, but it's just to let you know, because you'll notice it's like I just did it willy-nilly. So now we've successfully merged it and it has been incorporated into the main branch, right? So now we can delete this branch, but let's go git checkouts, go back to our main branch, git checkouts. Right? And you'll notice that this is not what's on GitHub. Right? So if we go back to GitHub, I edited the file MD or markdown file to say I've modified the code to include video. So this code includes videos, right? So if you're one of the collaborators, let's say there are 3 of us, and now you want to work on this, you have to do a git pull. So you're basically pulling the latest changes or modifications. Otherwise, what would happen is you'd be working with this unaware that here in the remote location, the code has been changed to include videos. Yours does not have that feature. So you use the git pull. You go back to your main branch, git pull, origin, git pull origin, main should be part of the main branch. So it's the opposite of push. We're pulling now, right? And you'll notice here it says I've modified the code to include video. So now you have the latest version of the code. And if you want to make your own changes, once again, you create a new branch. And let's say the next feature is to make statuses. So we'll call this one statuses. See? So now you can modify your code to make statuses and push it. And that's the general workflow. And then you go back and forth. So yeah, I think that's it from my side in terms of this presentation. Yeah, anticipate questions. And yeah, thank you for making time. I do apologize for the inconvenience at the beginning. And yeah, I'm done for now.
All right. Thank you for that, sir. Thank you for that presentation. It seems like people have been following up, and there are some questions. Let's start off with the questions on the chat. But in the meantime, everyone else, please just start to raise your hand, and then we'll just unmute and get you to ask your questions. But to go through some of the questions on the chat, there was a question whether this this session is being recorded for later. Yes, it is being recorded for later. We'll also post the link on Sonke. I think because we started late, we'll then try to edit the video before uploading it to Sonke, just to ensure that you get to follow this session accordingly. And then Jocelyn asked, if a project consists of Python solutions and an application, I'm guessing she means an app. Yeah, there's a bit of a difference technically between an application and an app. And I'm guessing she means an app in this case. Should we use 2 branches or create a branch for each feature? Tinashe, do you want to answer that?
Okay, so you're saying, do you create 2 branches or a branch for each feature? If I understand you asking...
Yeah, let's say they've got a Python application, right? And then maybe an Android app. Jocelyn, please correct me if I'm misunderstanding you. But essentially, you will then have Python code and then an application maybe written in React, because that's Jocelyn's thing. Should they create 2 branches for each? Oh, well, Jocelyn, can you please come in?
Yes, sir.
Can I? Oh, sorry.
Yes, sir. The way you explained it, like, do you need 2 branches for one being for React.js and the other one being for Python? Because they're 2 different things.
Hello, Gloria. Thank you for the question. So you'll have one branch, because if you refer to Visual Studio Code, you'll have different folders. You could have your React folder, and then obviously your Python folder, right? Like you'll have your folders on the side and your files. So you create a branch for each new feature you want to implement. So for example, let's say you weren't even using React, you're using HTML, and you connected the HTML with Python. You'd make a branch for that specific feature that you want to add, and then your files.
Yeah,
Hello?
I can hear you now.
Yeah, no, I was just exiting the meeting because I was on the masterclass that is.
Oh. Okay.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, no. So you create a branch for each feature that you want to implement. Your files and folders would be in essentially one location which you work from. So it depends on the feature you want to implement. So it's not for each, how can I say, framework. It's for each feature, and then you'll have your code and your folders that you're working from. I hope that answered your question.
Okay, I have a silly question.
Hello, can you guys hear me?
No, go ahead with your silly question, Gloria.
Yes, so can you create the branch within the folders that are in the same location?
Can you okay, let me repeat your question. Can you create the branch?
Yes, within the folder. I carry one folder is for HTML and one folder is for Python. So can you create a branch for each feature within each of the folders?
Oh, I see what you mean. I've never actually tried that. Like I can see where you're going with this question. So typically you don't do that. You create one branch for everything, and then you edit whatever you need to edit. So you're not going to create one branch for HTML, one branch for React, and one branch for Python. You create a branch for everything. And then if you only needed to change the Python file, you'll change the Python file, and then you'll make that push request. If I'm making sense. Because if I visualize your way, I can see it getting a bit messy. So the folders, yes, the comment that the folders are within a branch. You have all your folders within a branch. It doesn't mean that you have to edit everything. You might only edit the Python files, but everything is together, and you have one branch, and everything is within that branch, and you create your new feature, or you change or fix whatever you're meant to fix. So you don't create a branch under each framework or programming language. Create one branch with everything, and then you just change what you need to change. You merge it, and then you continue your changes. Continue making branches for each change. I hope that was clear.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Hello?
Tinashe, yes, we are still with you. I'm just going
Okay.
to look at. All right. So someone had asked as to how do you change a branch, but Bongani, thank you for answering that. I'm not sure. Perhaps Tinashe, do you just maybe give some high-level wisdom around switching between branches?
So I would just say be very specific with what you're doing, because it can get very confusing, especially there's a command, I forget it off the top of my head, to list all your changes, right? You can display all the changes you've made to that branch. And if you're not specific with what you're doing, you'll notice I use very bland, straightforward language, like I modified this file, I created this file. Make it so that it's easy to interpret, for especially easy for the next person to follow. Like the next person doesn't have to guess what did you do. Now start looking into the code. So basically, it's like we're sharing a highway. Analogy off the top of my head. You have to be as predictable for the next driver as possible to ensure a safe driving experience. So to ensure collaboration, you have to be as straightforward as possible. Say what you're doing, make it obvious for the next person, and use descriptions that are concise, short, and clear. So I would just say that in terms of managing your branches.
Okay. All right. So, well, another thing is try not to be switching branches on a Friday afternoon, because that's when most dangers happen. But yeah, so just be careful, especially if you're working with a large team. Tinashe did highlight, different restrictions in which companies would have, but just always keep cognizance of not committing to the main branch, or a master branch as such, because that's when you could essentially break production code. So just be careful on that. But for a hackathon, it's always a good practice as well to ensure that different members of your team get to create branches, and then you merge at the end. Well, not necessarily at the end, but from time to time. So just try to adopt that practice, that if Karabo is working on this feature, there's another member on this feature, just make it a good practice to do so. And then this is also common for new users in terms of Git. I think one of the crucial things is there's a file called .git ignore. The .git ignore file is very much important, because that's where you get to specify folders and files that must not be pushed into a Git platform. And some tend to push node files, or and also credentials as well. So just be careful on that. But from a branches perspective, just ensure that you always practice caution. All right, and then please explain the purpose of this keys of key. Oh, sorry. Please explain the purpose of this key stuff. So I think Joshua is referring to the purpose of the SSH key. Bongani did answer that C keys as a security measure, but maybe just high level nugget, Tinashe, in terms of the purpose, and perhaps also the importance of the SSH keys.
Hello. Thank you for the question. So it's essentially, like was mentioned by Tiani earlier, it's for security purposes and to prove ownership. So it's essentially your local machine communicating with the remote repository. Hence why you paste your public key under that particular, I can say, folder in the remote directory, and then you have your private key on the local machine. So it's a way of communicating between the local and remote to prove that you are in fact the owner of that repository. Yeah, yeah.
Yes, it did. And I think you will learn more about SSH keys when we get to the AWS session, because most cloud platforms will then allow you to access your the remote machine using SSH key, but it is really to ensure that that their identity between your local machine and the remote machine is established. But if you want to practice more in terms of SSH keys, Linux users, that's very common. But on Visual Studio Code, for practice purposes, you might want to install what was that extension? Remote SSH. But there's also Open SSH, of which then governs the protocol developed by Microsoft, essentially. But yeah, so I'm pretty sure that you will learn more when we get to the AWS session in terms of the SSH key, but it's always crucial. And with some cloud platforms, you actually deploy, you can be able to deploy via GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket using SSH keys. Yeah. And then another question. Oh, there's no other question. Guys, can you please just raise your hands if you have questions? This is an opportunity to perhaps get the hang of Git and GitHub. Or maybe let me ask a question. Who knows the difference between Git and GitHub?
Hello.
Yes,
Hello?
Tinashe.
The question directed to me. Okay.
I know it was directed to the congregation, but
Okay.
perhaps you can answer it, because there's no tech. I was about to point someone randomly, but if you could just explain the difference between Git and GitHub.
Okay. So Git would be the system that allowed us to track all the changes we made to our code, right? So you notice you use different Git commands such as git add, git commit, git pull, git push, git clone. Essentially, a system that allows us to manage different versions of our code. So usually you can use it from the command prompt. You can use it from Visual Studio. So it's basically a version control system. It allows us to track versions of our code, make branches, etc. GitHub is where we actually store the code. Like it's basically our remote repository. It's somewhere on the cloud, on the internet. So basically, we make changes using Git. Git allows us to keep track of our changes. Sorry, to keep track of the changes that we've made, whether we've made new files, whether we've modified them, and which version of our code we might be on. Git enables all that. GitHub is where we actually store the code. If for lack of a better word. I hope that answer satisfactory.
Yeah, but if anyone wants more clarity or is not fully does not fully understand, please do raise your hand, and let's use this opportunity to essentially get through. But so what I'm posting now, another beauty of GitHub is that GitHub actually has a data sets portal. So these data sets are aimed at helping you save life. Well, save your life, or make your life easier. So let's say maybe you were looking for country codes in your app. You're looking for a list of cities around the world. You're looking for any sort of data labels as well, or any kind of utilities as well. If you're looking for oil prices, all the airports around the world, but also all the airports in South Africa. If you're looking for population growth over the years, they still have COVID-19 data as well. So that's another beauty of GitHub. So I'm just pasting the link on the chat now. So you can essentially make use of those data sets to essentially integrate some of this data into your application. Another thing with GitHub, you can also host your page. So GitHub Pages is essentially created for that. But the only thing is that you can only host static applications, but obviously you can still then link that up with whether you are using Firebase or your Superbase or whatever third-party mechanism. But the story is that you should be able to confidently explain the difference between Git and GitHub as such. Obviously, there are other platforms besides GitHub. You've got Bitbucket, you've got GitLab, you've got LiveGit, you've got all range of code vision, cloud platform as a service, or sometimes you also have it as a software as a service, of which GitLab provides you that opportunity. But I hope that you guys have acquired some light. I know some of you might be quite familiar with Git, but sometimes it's always best to also get a different perspective, because you might find a new way of doing things in that regard. Just final round in terms of questions. Are we all clear? Are we ready to get away? Ria Mukhetso, are you fine? Ria? Okay. All right. So I think everyone is fine. Perhaps let me see if Tenjiwe is can be able to speak. Can you try unmuting Tenjiwe? Okay, seemingly not. So the next session is on web development, which is set for tomorrow. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, for those who are getting load shedded just now, enjoy load shedding. And for those who are preparing to write, best of luck. And let me also take this opportunity to thank Tinashe for delivering the session today and engaging. And we'll continue to ensure that you are getting these insights. And as Nick is saying, I'm also available on Sonke for other questions. So you can inbox Nick, you can inbox Skinny, Pabalo, and any of the team members for anything around preparation. The bookings for travels from different areas are being handled. So please be on the lookout and respond to the communications that the team from UNISA has been sending. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, good evening. See you soon.